Millionaire fired 101 nannies in 6 months, but a black maid did the impossible with his 6 daughters. Look, I don't want to be prejudiced, but are you sure you can handle difficult children? The question left Harrison Wheeler's mouth with that condescending tone rich men reserve for being polite. His eyes skimmed the 24-year-old across the mahogany table, as if he were appraising cattle at market. Keisha Williams adjusted her posture in the Italian leather chair and smiled with a serenity only someone who has weathered worse storms can keep. I have experience with children in traumatic situations, Mr. Wheeler. It's exactly what I need to pay for my psychology degree. What Harrison didn't know was that Keisha had spent the last 3 days obsessively researching him online. She had discovered more than she expected about the real estate mogul who'd lost his wife in a car accident and was now facing an unprecedented domestic rebellion. 6 uncontrollable daughters, 101 nannies fired in 6 months, and a reputation beginning to crack at the edges. The last nanny had run out screaming. "My daughters are little devils," Harrison continued, fidgeting with his Rolex. "You understand we're not talking about normal children, right? We're talking about a veritable domestic hell." From upstairs came the scrape of something heavy across the floor, followed by children's laughter that sounded more like battle cries. Harrison grimaced with embarrassment. Keisha remained impassive, mentally cataloging every detail of the conversation. "Look, I'll be blunt," Harrison said, leaning forward. "You seem like a well-educated girl, but this isn't the place for people like you. It's a very stressful environment with a lot of money involved and high expectations. Maybe it would be better to look for something more suited to your profile." At that moment, Keisha realized she wasn't just there for a job. She was facing a far bigger opportunity. Her eyes flashed with an intensity that made Harrison recoil slightly without understanding why. "Mr. Wheeler," she replied calmly, "I accept the job. And I guarantee your daughters won't make me run away." She paused, measured. "In fact, I have a feeling that in the end, you'll be the one begging me to stay." Harrison let out a nervous laugh. "We'll see. You start tomorrow at 7 in the morning. Salary is $3,000 a month, no benefits. Do you accept, or do you want to think about it?" "I accept," said Keisha, extending a firm hand to seal the deal. "But I have one condition. I want complete freedom to deal with the children my way. No interference, no questions about my methods." As she walked toward the exit, Keisha observed every detail of the mansion. Walls marked with crayons, stained Persian rugs, expensive paintings hanging crookedly. But it was Harrison's phone conversation that caught her attention. "No, Mom, she's just temporary, a girl from the suburbs. You know how it is. She'll last about 2 days, a week at most. Then we'll hire a real professional." If you're enjoying this story of social upheaval, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, the voice in her head might have said, because what Keisha was about to do to this elite family went far beyond caring for difficult children. What no one there knew was that this girl from the suburbs held secrets that would transform Harrison Wheeler's arrogance into something very close to respect if he could survive the hurricane about to hit his perfect life. On her first day, Keisha arrived at 7 sharp, wearing clean jeans and a simple white t-shirt, a backpack that looked like it contained only cleaning supplies. Anyone looking closer would have noticed the small digital recorder in her back pocket and the cell phone strategically placed to capture audio. "I thought you weren't coming," Harrison said, opening the door, with a face that looked like he had just woken up. "The last nanny promised to come back too, but, well, you'll understand soon enough." Harrison's 6 daughters were arranged on the stairs like little generals observing a battlefield. Madison, the oldest at 12, carried the calculating coldness only traumatized children develop. The 8-year-old twins, Ashley and Amanda, whispered to one another with smiles that looked more like silent threats. "Girls, this is... Sorry, what's your name again?" Harrison asked with obvious indifference. "Keisha," she replied, watching the children's reactions closely. "Keisha is going to clean the house today. I don't know how long she'll last," he said with a laugh, grabbing his car keys. "I have an important meeting with Japanese investors. You understand these international business things, right?" "No, of course you don't." It was then Keisha confirmed her suspicion. Harrison Wheeler wasn't arrogant merely because he was rich. He was the kind of white man who belittled others to feel big. The problem was he'd chosen the wrong person as a stepping stone. As soon as Harrison left, the real test began. Madison descended the stairs with the authority of a miniature CEO and stopped inches from Keisha's face. "Listen here, you," she said in a voice too firm for a 12-year-old. "We don't want you here. We don't want anyone here. So leave before we make you." Instead of backing down or asserting authority, Keisha crouched to the girl's eye level. "I understand. You lost your mom, and now everyone comes in thinking they can take her place. It must be awful." Madison blinked, not expecting that response. For a second, the mask of coldness fluttered, revealing a wounded child beneath the controlled anger. "You don't know anything about us," Madison snapped, but her voice had lost some of its force. "I know you made 101 adults give up in 6 months. That takes intelligence, coordination, and creativity. I'm impressed." The other girls exchanged confused looks. No adult had ever praised their mischief before. What Keisha didn't tell them was that she had also been a troubled child. She'd lost her parents at 9 and lived in 7 foster homes before she turned 16, perfecting the art of pushing away adults who couldn't handle her pain. The difference was luck. She'd found a social worker, Mrs. Johnson, who understood that difficult children are wounded children, speaking the only language they know, self-defense. While the girls argued about what the first trap would be, Keisha began cleaning, recording every detail of the house. She noticed the photos of Harrison's late wife placed in every room where her daughters could see them, as if he wanted them to live in eternal mourning. She also saw open medical bills on the office desk, showing hospital debts over $2 million. The millionaire was not as well off as he liked to appear. Around noon, the landline rang. Keisha heard Harrison talking about cutting household expenses and hiring less qualified staff. She discreetly activated the recorder in her pocket. "Look, Mom, I know you think I should hire someone more suitable, but this girl from the suburbs costs a third of what a real professional would cost. Honestly, these people are more resilient. They can take more abuse from the kids. And what about their education, their future?" "Please," Harrison gestured with his whiskey glass. "They'll go to Swiss boarding schools once I sort this out. This girl from the suburbs is just a stopgap." Keisha was upstairs tidying the twins' room, but the device in her pocket recorded everything. Ashley heard the entire conversation and cried quietly on the stairs. "Is he going to send us away?" she whispered when Keisha approached. "Not if you don't want to go. Sometimes adults say things when they're upset that they don't mean." But she knew Harrison was serious, and that prompted her to accelerate her plans. The following Thursday, while Harrison was on a desperate business trip trying to secure loans, Keisha received an important visitor. Dr. Patricia Montgomery, her master's advisor and one of the country's most respected child psychologists, had come to assess the home environment at Keisha's request. My God. As she watched Ashley have an anxiety attack during snack time, Dr. Montgomery murmured, "This child is exhibiting severe symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder." "Look at this," Keisha said, discreetly showing a drawing Sophia had made. Faceless human figures, houses without doors, families fragmented into colorful pieces. "Keisha, this is emotional neglect in its purest form," the doctor said, adjusting her glasses. "These children need urgent professional help." "I'm documenting everything," Keisha replied, opening a digital file on her tablet. "Behaviors, regressions, and signs of untreated trauma. But I need more time to build a solid case." Then Dr. Montgomery understood Keisha's real plan. "You're not just studying neglect in wealthy families, you're building evidence to save these children." "Harrison Wheeler thinks he can buy everything, including the right to be an absent and prejudiced father," Keisha said, her eyes shining with determination.
After weeks of paying Keisha to build the file that would destroy not only his reputation, but also his custody of the daughters he clearly didn't know how to love, the next morning arrived like a hurricane in Harrison Wheeler's life. At 7:30 a.m., 3 official cars pulled up in front of the mansion. Representatives from Child Protective Services, a state social worker, and Dr. Patricia Montgomery, whose reputation in child psychology was both impeccable and feared by the negligent. Harrison opened the door, still in his pajamas, with dark circles under his eyes and messy hair. "There must be some mistake," he stammered, trying to maintain his composure. "We are a respectable family." "Mr. Wheeler," said the social worker in a firm voice, "we've received a detailed report of severe emotional neglect and documentation of a home environment that is harmful to the minors in your custody." Dr. Montgomery stepped forward carrying a bulky briefcase. "In addition, we have audiovisual evidence suggesting discriminatory behavior and statements of planned abandonment of the children." Harrison's blood ran cold. Audiovisual evidence? That was impossible. Who? How? It was then that Keisha descended the stairs, wearing an impeccable professional blazer and carrying a leather briefcase. She was no longer the suburban maid Harrison thought he knew. Her hair was loose and well-groomed, she wore stylish glasses, and she walked with the authority of someone who had always known exactly who she was. "Good morning, Mr. Wheeler," she said with a smile that made his stomach churn. "Allow me to properly introduce myself. Keisha Williams, master's student in child psychology at Harvard University, specializing in trauma and neglect in high-income families." Harrison stared at her as if he were seeing a ghost. You lied to me." "Actually," Keisha replied calmly, opening her briefcase, "I never lied. You simply assumed, based on your prejudices, that a black woman could not possess academic qualifications superior to yours." The social worker began leafing through the report. According to the documentation presented by Miss Williams, the minors were exposed to an emotionally toxic environment, with documented parental neglect and explicit plans for abandonment through inappropriate boarding schools. "That's ridiculous," Harrison exploded. "She was just here to clean." She was a Harvard student conducting research approved by the University Ethics Committee, with complete legal documentation of all evidence collected. Keisha activated a small recorder. Harrison's voice echoed clearly. "Look, she costs a third of what I'd pay for a real nanny, and honestly, these people are more resilient." Harrison's face paled. "You can't use that. That was a private conversation." "In a work environment where I was present as an employee documenting possible abuse, it's completely legal." More recordings followed. Harrison instructing Keisha to spank his daughters, calling them problematic, and detailing his plans to send them away to boarding schools to get rid of the problem. Ashley appeared at the top of the stairs, followed by her sisters. They all watched silently, finally understanding that someone had come to protect them. "Mr. Wheeler," said the social worker, "the minors will be temporarily removed from your custody for a complete psychological evaluation. The state will initiate a parental investigation process." "You can't take my daughters away from me," Harrison shouted, completely losing his composure. "I'm a respected businessman. I have rights." Dr. Montgomery approached him. "Your rights as a father end when the emotional safety of your children are at risk. And based on this documentation, Mr. Wheeler, your daughters have been at risk for over a year." Then Keisha revealed her final trump card. "There's one more thing, Mr. Wheeler. I took out a folder of official documents. As part of my research, I contacted the corporate finance department. It turns out that Mantex is under investigation for tax evasion and money laundering." Harrison's eyes widened. "How did you... That's confidential information." "Information that became public when an anonymous employee concerned for the welfare of children whose father was under extreme financial pressure provided evidence to the IRS." At that moment, Harrison understood the magnitude of what had happened. He hadn't hired a desperate maid. He had brought into his home a highly qualified researcher with academic and legal connections who had methodically documented every humiliation he had imposed. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you do this to me?" Keisha looked at him with a mixture of pity and firmness. "Because men like you think they can buy the right to mistreat people. Because you chose to humiliate a maid from the suburbs instead of caring for your own traumatized daughters." Ashley ran down the stairs and threw herself into Keisha's arms. "You're back! You said everything would be okay!" The other girls followed, forming a circle around Keisha. Madison spoke for them all. "Will he really stop yelling at us?" The social worker knelt down. "You'll be in a safe place now, with adults who truly care about you." Harrison watched helplessly as his life fell apart. His arrogance, prejudice, and neglect had been turned into legal evidence by a woman he considered inferior. The irony was devastating and perfectly executed. The girls will be in temporary specialized care, explained Dr. Montgomery. Miss Williams, with her qualifications and the positive relationship she's established, will serve as a consultant in their rehabilitation. As the official cars prepared to leave, Harrison stood alone at the door of his empty mansion. The man who believed money could buy everything had lost what mattered most, because he failed to recognize human value when it stood right before him. Keisha turned one last time before getting into the car. "Mr. Wheeler, your daughters weren't the problem. You were. And now they'll finally have the chance to grow up knowing they deserve love and respect, something you never managed to offer." The gate closed, leaving Harrison with the crushing realization that his own arrogance had built the perfect trap. He had spent weeks paying someone to document his downfall. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing hypocrisy, it's doing it so methodically and perfectly that the victim himself provides all the evidence for his own destruction. But what no one knew yet was that this story was far from over. Harrison's recordings weren't just evidence against him, they were the key to something much bigger that would transform not only the lives of the 6 girls, but also Keisha's career in ways she couldn't have imagined when she first rang that mansion's doorbell.